Okay. That's good. Okay, recording. Okay, I'm consenting to being recorded by squinting at the screen. Yeah. So we'll see. Of course, are you looking for something, Mom? Oh, he's on his chair. Okay. So luckily that has been recorded for posterity. The mail hasn't come yet today, and he's just been kind of looking for an excuse to start barking stuff. So we may have a full freak out recorded on tape.
We know where Oliver is. That's the important thing.
Sometimes I can't find, well, because you know how it is when you live with you forget because they're so noisy and they have such strong opinions and they're running around the house that you forget that physically, they're not that big.
Right. Yeah, it could be hiding anywhere. Right?
Yeah, every once in a while it's like, where are they? Just a little tiny thing. Or I'll take a picture of like down the house and he's like standing next to like my brother or something. He's like 6 feet tall. It's just like this kind of ant or something. Anyway, so I don't know if you had any subjects you wanted to talk about, or I was kind of thinking of Rama, Frederick Lenz, and Leslie Temple Thurston, just personally today, because the whole idea that there can be this kind of spiritual transmission in a direct lineage that is going to mean that if you get in with the right lineage or people that have a certain reputation, that it's going to protect you from ill effects, or that it's impossible to learn anything useful from someone who may be kind of skeevy or even very skeevy.
Yeah.
Because, well, like I was telling you, I mean, when I was in the 90s and I was living at Tibetan Buddhist Meditation Center, which was Awam Choden, with a real live Rinpoche, Lama Kunga. And I lived there for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years in the house. There weren't like a lot of people living in the house, and it wasn't like a super active center. But, I had a lot of people come by, and he, was born in Tibet. His dad was like the treasurer for the Dalai Lama's government. He was recognized as a Rinpoche at a young age and raised by monks in the Sakya tradition in Tibet. And then had to escape in the early 60s into India, and then made his way to the United States, where he became a teacher. And I learned an incredible amount from him and from living at that center. However, it was one of those situations where, for example, he was supposed to be, as a Lama and Rinpoche in the Sakya tradition, he was supposed to be celibate. But at the time that I was living there, and I guess they were together for decades, his girlfriend, Judith Skinner, was living there. And now there's been a small a short documentary made about her. She was an incredible teacher. I learned a lot from him, but I learned, I think, even more from her. She's a Caucasian lady. She is, I don't know, like 10, 15 years older than I am. I'm in my early 60s. And she had been living with him. She started as a student, but then became his girlfriend for a number of years. They traveled, they did everything together, but it was a strange situation because it's like no one was supposed to know, but everyone knew. And she was also an incredible teacher, and she was very well placed because she had a good understanding. She's a writer, very well spoken, and she's able to talk about these concepts very directly and from a more like to the Westerner, to simplify things for people who are just beginning to get into the practice. And she was encouraged by people higher up in Tibetan Buddhism to stay and support Rinpoche in his work, which she was very good at. But at the same time, she's very devout practitioner, and she really wanted to go on retreat, right? Which is one of the basic things in Tibetan Buddhism. You do a 3-year retreat where you just focus on performing rituals and mantra and prostrations, various practices. So the idea is that you're training and you're kind of burning through a lot of karma and establishing this big foundation for you can come out and become more of a teacher, as I understand it. But there was this kind of thing. It's like, well, you can accumulate karma by supporting him, but of course you can't be acknowledged publicly for what you're doing because it's against the supposed precepts, right? So it put her in this like really difficult position, and she was getting pressure from a lot of the other parts of the organization to keep doing this. But when I was there, she finally decided to go on retreat, and that's the name of the documentary about her is On Retreat, because she has been in, I guess it's over a quarter century now, on retreat. She works in San Francisco. She lives in a rent-controlled apartment. She works as a gardener, and she just has this very small place, and they have pictures of it in this short film, and it's just like her whole place is just like an altar. And so that she just works and does, and has been on retreat for like all this time ever since. She's I remember it was funny because His Holiness the Sakya Trizin had come with some of his entourage to stay and do some teachings at the meditation center. And it was really incredible to me because, you know, a lot of people talk about the texts and the practices and the visualizations and the subtle anatomy and, you know, what do the mantras mean and what is the cosmology, and all of which is fascinating. And even just like the art and everything is just incredible. But what was the things that was fascinating to me was you would be around these people who had trained extensively in these traditions for you know, most of their lives, and they were just saying reality is different. Different things happen, and it was so fascinating. This is not the Sakya Trizin right now. I believe it was his father who had visited us, and you could tell when he turned his attention to our center. It was like about a day, 36 hours before he was to arrive. You just feel like relaxation, and everyone started to treat one another better, and it was just like a lot more grace around, and it was beautiful. And it was just like a time you felt like you could just relax, and you kind of have that experience where you're not so bound up in ego and the hierarchy and wanting to get things done and worrying about all the petty stuff. It was just a real expansion. And it was funny too, because that lasted, and then about 12 hours before he was going to be out the door, you could tell you could really feel it when his attention had moved to his next place that he was going to be. And I had similar experiences with, one guy, it was kind of the same type of thing you could feel when his attention was on our place, but it was just kind of like, it was like a contraction, and people got snippy and a lot more concerned about, okay, who is going to be the first person to greet this person? Okay, and I'm going to be next. Wait, I'm giving you these flowers that are even better than, you know, all this kind of petty BS. So it was very instructive to me about not just seeing the rituals, which of course are very beautiful, but that human element where you get to have that experience, and it's not necessarily tied with a initiation or anything. It's just being around this person and how they move through the world. But anyway, so he was kind of had a lot of weight on him, but he had heart problems, and so he was very restricted, you know, in what he could eat. I mean, people were making him like beautiful platters of like tropical fruits and stuff like that. But these guys who were traveling with him were like younger, and they didn't have those type of restrictions, so they're kind of like had that lean and hungry look. So I said, well, one day I said, hey, I can make pancakes for everyone, you know, except for Sakya. So I was making all these guys pancakes, and they were like super excited, like more, because, you know, they're usually having to eat this like kind of very ascetic diet, and they're like,
yeah.
And it was really a funny thing to be just like making pancakes, like my mom or dad would make on the weekend, you know, when you're a kid growing up, and I'm sending these pancakes out, and then they have these Tibetan Buddhist nuns that are like praying over your pancakes.
Yeah.
It was a surreal moment. But I remember that they were sitting around the table afterwards, and I was in my room, which was right next to the dining room. And Judith came in, and she's like, I'm going to go on retreat. And I was like, I'm really excited for you. I think that's perfect, because we'd been praying together for people who are in need, but especially people who had passed on. You know, you do have the 49 days of prayer for people as they're in the bardo. And so we would do that practice together. And so I was, and plus she just taught me a lot about iconography and practice. And she was very good at working practice into your everyday. Like, it's like you have to walk anyway, so you can do a circumnavigation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. So just to make it easy, and so it's not like you're just like showing up, but just like how to focus your life on these practices and trying to develop them. But it was funny when she walked out the door, it was just like I've never felt so much like people were trying to eavesdrop in my entire life. So it was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna go, move on from Rinpoche. But anyway, so it all worked out fine. The center is still there, Rinpoche is still there, Judith's still around and doing her thing. But yeah, so it was a place where everyone was just human, and there was some things that were pretty unethical that went on, but also I saw a lot to admire, and I just learned a lot, and I met some really interesting people. And I think that partly I was really influenced because I'd read Deanne Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense, and she talks there about some of her own experiences going to live in esoteric communities, and how it's important as a student to develop your own contacts and your own ethics before you go and get involved with other groups and stuff, so that you are able to stay true to yourself. And so I felt like I was able to do that. And so, because, I mean, it's very glamorous, and, you're learning so much, and you're having these experiences of people showing up in your dreams, and those like, intense psychic experiences, meditation experiences, and that all the people around you are having them too. So it's easy to get kind of thrown off center, but and it can be very exciting. But the thing is that you want to focus on why are you here, and to not try and like glamorize it and put the whole responsibility for the interaction and the learning experience onto the teacher. I think it's a little less now, but there still tends to be this whole kind of like guru idea. That's a very particular practice. And I don't know that it's necessarily super appropriate in Western capitalist society. But the other thing is, even if you go and read the original text, like about like Milarepa, who had a like very intense guru relationship with his guru, it was like years and years of living together and going through all this stuff and talking to a bunch of people about, who is this guy, observing how he is in various aspects of his life before you decide to sign on for that type of relationship, right?
Right.
But it becomes romanticized here in the West, especially, where it's like, oh, I just saw this guru and I just knew. And so then, and it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen? It's like some people can fall in love, in 2 weeks, and then get married in 3 months and go on to have a great relationship. But that's not how it works for everyone. And So, so anyway, so going back to during that same time period, I ended up starting to sit a lot with Leslie Temple Thurston, who was coming to like Marin and the Bay Area. And sitting up for a few years, she would come like once a month or once every 2 or 3 months and have like a weekend, and you just have 2 days. You're just kind of sitting there meditating with, like a couple hundred people. You have a lunch break, and then she'll be talking or playing like a Deuter or Himalayan bowls meditation music or something.
Yeah.
And she's talking about like telepathic communication with animals and stuff. But and she is a very interesting person to me, because it's hard to find anything scandalous about her. And she's done a lot of good works. I mean, she's from South Africa, and from the beginning, she has organizations set up to try and help with, one of her first ones was with people that have been orphaned due to AIDS, which was a much bigger issue back when she started it, but still. And then helping wildlife and animals, as well as her teaching. and there's not really a lot of scandal. But then her teacher, one of her big earthly teachers, and actually she was a big one too, to talk about it's not appropriate to just kind of ape or imitate a particular teacher, right? You're not trying to become them. You're trying to figure out who you are and figure out what it is that you can do with your own life to further whatever your spiritual aims are. And she was really big on students taking their own responsibility for their own learning and development. So she has a lot of resources, and it's possible to take classes and stuff, but then she has a lot of free resources even still on her site. It facilitates setting up like small groups of students working together to help each other develop, things like that. But that was something that she's a mom. She acts like a mom.
Yeah.
She's like, you guys, you need to not. She's like, I see some of you, it's like you're trying to look like me and act like me, and you need to be you. So,
right.
But her teacher, one of her earthly teachers, was like a super scandalous grifter, cult leader. Unfortunately, she died by suicide. Very materialistic, exploited his students sexually. Frederick Lenz. Which was funny because today I was reading a little bit about him. He also went by Zen Master Rama, because people were calling him Freddie, which is actually one of my nicknames from the time I was very small. And yeah, it was off a cartoon that I read with my dad. One of the characters was named Fred, and so like my mom will still call me Freddie sometimes. So it kind of takes me back to being little tiny. But he was one of those. If anyone knows Master Roshi from the San Francisco Zen Center, kind of a similar type of vibe. There's a book called Shoes Outside the Door about the history of the San Francisco Zen Center. And the thing, my husband and I were reading it, and we always quote this to each other. I guess Roshi, he really grew the Zen Center. He was incredibly influential and really built it up as an organization that had like a sound material basis. And so part of that involved getting a lot of money going. So at one point he needed a new car, and he said that he wanted a Mercedes. I think it's a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz, some fancy car, because he liked to drive in Zazen position.
Yeah. Well, that's one way to do it.
I mean, who would believe this BS? But yeah, so Frederick Lenz was kind of along the same type of a vibration. But the thing is that, first of all, when I was sitting with Leslie, there was a lot of Rama's students that had come over, and once Leslie started teaching, they started studying with her. And I remember this one guy, Michael, he was really nice, very thoughtful guy. He studied TM too. But he was funny. He's like, yeah, it's like the rest of us are kind of, goofing around and just enjoying the kind of lifestyle and, the drugs and partying and everything. And Leslie would always be sitting in the back actually meditating and stuff. So now we're following her because she actually took us seriously, right? But then, and the weird thing with Lenz too is like a lot of people say that they saw him, like levitate, or like I was watching this interview with Leslie. She said, yeah, I'd actually watch him disappear, and a bunch of other people saw it too. Some people didn't. So just because someone has, he may have had like an actual level of attainment or understanding, but just couldn't stabilize it properly in his human form. It sounds like he had, a lot of problems with depression and probably like drinking and partying and running around. All this stuff didn't help him either. But it strikes me because I see a lot of people in kind of online occult spaces. And there's this kind of idea that if you have an intellectual understanding of a tradition that that you can follow through history, or you can kind of see the steps where it originated and stuff, that gives you some type of protection or an assurance of effectiveness or authenticity. I mean, it may, but, and then also I see the idea of like, people will bring up like Crowley, and people are like, oh, he was a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. Or Gail Fortune, oh, she was a horrible person and she was such a prude. Or, anyone.
Right.
I mean, especially when you start going back in history, everyone is going to have these problems. So I think personally, I'm always in favor of seeing more emphasis on how do we be better students? How do we become better like fellow seekers so that we can support each other? Yeah.
Right. Well, I've often thought, especially in recent years, that assholes can be as instructive as pure-hearted people, because sometimes they show you what not to do or how
It's
not
true.
to be, right? So everything is a learning experience. The life and your interactions with every person you meet is instructive. And that's why like community settings like you described are like very important. If everybody's ostensibly there for the same practice, obviously no situation like that is going to be perfect. You're going to have the ones that are just there for prestige or to do some drugs or get away from the world. But you are going to have those ones that are there for, I guess, what you could consider altruistic reasons. But altruism is one of those kind of phantom descriptors with people. You're never going to find somebody 100% altruistic because it's not practical and it's not in human nature. But there is a little bit of it, I think, in everybody. So it's very difficult to talk about any personalities in the occult and try to square who they were with what they wrote and what they practiced and what they taught against how they lived. Because first of all, their lives are shrouded in mystery and mythology and hagiography and and fans extolling their virtues and mythologizing them, critics tearing them down and spreading false rumors about them. There's so much to sort through with every magician and every teacher, every spiritual guru, that it becomes almost a fool's errand to do it. But ultimately, really, it doesn't matter in the respect that, like you say, the work is on you as a student of the stuff. Because you're always going to have the people that want to say it's all nonsense anyway. So they can just point and laugh at any guru, any spiritual teacher, anybody even just with religious ideology or spiritual ideas as magical thinkers that are stupid for believing that. And I'm not even talking about those people. If you believe in any of this stuff, if you're interested in learning about occult and magical practices, the onus is on you, and it's your job to be a little bit autodidactic about it, and it does help, especially well. I will also second psychic self-defense, because having some non-corporeal backup with that, trusting your intuition, is huge, and having protection in that respect. But it is kind of on you to use critical discernment, and I think that's part of the test of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I think too, a lot of it is finding like knowing, okay, why are you wanting to do this? I mean, different people have different reasons. With a lot of people, it's just, you just
Magic powers.
Yeah. You're driven or called to pursue these. I mean, for me, I was always interested in weird stuff, and then I had like a big old near-death experience when I was 20, and I was contacted by discarnate entities that gave me various practices to try and teachings, and I'm still in contact with them. And a lot of it is driven by that for me. But then also it's like my mission statement or whatever. I'm very Vajrayana Buddhist in that, you know, I had that Mahayana insight that you can try and get your own self all squared away and enlightened or beyond suffering or whatever, transcended, but we're all interconnected, and so you have to interact with the outer world and other beings in some way to try and, you know, help how you can. So for me, a lot of my motivation as to what I'm driven to study or talk about comes from, and it sounds like Victorian, an inner impetus from my guides, things that you know, other people might be having a problem with or curious about, or that could help them. Things that I had that were difficult for me or shocking for me, or where I didn't have a lot of guidance, or didn't find a lot of resources out there. I try and speak more openly about that and see what I can do to, you know, just talk with people about it in a way so that, you know, they're more, it's less unmooring. I mean, a lot of these experiences, especially spontaneously for people, can very turn your world, you know, into a tumble. But does it have to be that extreme? Is there a way to interact with these type of experiences so people can find peace with them or feel like they can be helpful to other people? But then if you are someone who is interested in developing yourself career-wise, or you need money, which everyone needs, so I'm all for it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a different type of approach. Or if you're someone who's just finds these matters intellectually fascinating and you want to get at the material roots of it, so you're trying to investigate like the material side of parapsychology, or the anthropology of weird experiences. I mean, I think all of this is fascinating, but I think for if you are an individual as a seeker or someone interacting in these spaces, it's very helpful to be clear about what your own motivation and your own ethics, and to realize it's going to be very different for different people. I mean,
yeah, I mean, the personal choices and circumstantial choices as well, you know, and that's important to distinguish. But I think the morality of it is on a sliding scale for a lot of this stuff.
Well, that's just human nature.
Well, but I mean, it is something I've struggled with. Like, even just doing tarot readings. I've been reading tarot since I was, I don't know, 15, 16, somewhere around there, off and on. But I never did it like professionally, and I never set it up. And there were one or two times that I just kind of floated it out there on the internet, like, hit me up if you want a tarot reading, and I set a price for it. I think I did that like 2 different times, and I didn't feel good about it, and I've never been able to. So like, anytime I've ever done tarot readings for people, I've said, they ask me what they should give me for it, and I say whatever you think it was worth. Like, you don't have to. You can give me nothing, and it's not going to insult me. I'm not going to think you thought it was worth nothing. But if you have nothing, you don't have to give me anything, you know? Like, and I've always treated it that way. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to turn around and criticize somebody for charging for tarot readings, because for me personally, I don't feel good about it. And I'm taking something too literally that I read at some point about how I think this goes back to old, like, alleged Rosicrucian ideas about
Yeah.
doing something out of the pureness of your heart and not accepting payment for it. Like that's actually there's something that's more skewed toward the black arts if you start accepting money for magical deeds, and that's something that's in a lot of these old grimoires and stuff like that. So, but I don't know if I just took that to heart at some point and it's just hardwired in me now. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's how I feel. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to like come after other people for doing that. I mean, and some people may make a good living off of it, And
Well,
I don't
and
think
it's a legitimate
that,
service, and it takes
Right.
time and energy and skill. It's like, cooking a meal or something.
Right.
You can do it for free, or there's people who are professional chefs. But yeah, and I don't have any problem with anyone charging fairly for it. I mean, I think, like you say, people get kind of judgy about it. It's like, well, these people are putting, people have to live,
Right.
and you're getting their time and energy. I mean, for me, I'm able to interact a lot with people in a way where, I don't have to charge for it. But then also that gives me the freedom to, if I don't feel like interacting with someone, I don't feel any obligation to do it either.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's something to be said about, I think, if you if you have that luxury of having parts of your life that aren't completely enmeshed with the capitalist money system.
Yeah. 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 I
So
mean, I think I'm fortunate to be employed and make enough money that I don't need to charge for things.
yeah.
Um, it would be nice if I didn't have to kill myself working because I do, right? I wear myself completely thin. And I don't think people realize how little time I actually have. But it's like I just cannot bring myself to charge for most things. Even if I like could make a couple bucks putting ads on my blog, I'm like, no, no. I hate advertisements. I hate how we're inundated with this stuff all of the time, and it's just become so normal.
Mhm.
Everything I do is more or less for free, and I'm a real stick in the mud about that, which also probably means that I'll never be able to do it full time. But as you were saying earlier, like I think when your heart's in the right place, um, you can never really go wrong doing magic on somebody else's behalf without expecting anything in return. And the expectation is huge. Um, and I think that's like why an Eastern perspective is really important with this, because if you really understand the noble truths and some of the stuff from the sutras about where suffering originates, um, it really tempers your expectations of things, you know, and selfish desire is not that hard to navigate when you realize like that there are things that you need to do for yourself, obviously, right? So,
Mhm.
but it's never going to hurt, especially in a magical operation, to do something with all sentient beings in mind. You know,
Even to just kind of have that reminder in your
yeah, running in the
consciousness.
background. Yeah, it can be running in the background even, and that's why I like when you talk about making it part of your daily practice. If you have to walk across a field to get to a building, that make that part of your meditative practice. And it's really kind of hard to explain to people that are resistant to it or think that there's some trick to it. There's no real trick to it. It's just
What's the
just
idea
get in
about?
there. Just fold it
Yeah,
in.
what's that thing? Uh, oh, luck is an accident, but there's things you can do to make yourself accident prone. I forget who said that, but
Oh,
it's the same idea.
yeah.
Where part of the spiritual life is you're hoping to have certain realizations, insights, states of consciousness, um, which arise spontaneously, but you can set yourself up, set your life up in a way where you kind of make yourself more likely to have those situations arise, and you can try and develop yourself so that you're more likely to aware. Because one of the things that Leslie would teach us is that you have these expanded states of consciousness fairly frequently, but where you're expanded, from where you are. Or maybe have like a more relaxed, insightful, or loving awareness. But especially in our fast-paced modern society, there tends to be shoved to the side and denigrated or not whatever. And so people tend to not notice it or become aware of. And she said, even just like when you kind of notice those moments, and you can journal about them, or make a small drawing, or acknowledge it in some way. Keep a notebook if you want, where you kind of write up some of these experiences, and that kind of helps to knit them into your manifest life. I don't want to say consensus reality, and help it become more fabric of your life. It's like if you do like a gratitude practice, or you're nice to when you go out walking, you are nice to your neighbors and say hi and see how they're doing, that type of thing, right? You'll start to get a reputation that becomes part of who you are. Oh, this is the nice person who walks around and is always pleasant, and then people start reflecting that back to you, and this becomes more of who you are. So a lot of it, I think, is habits and intention, but then that sets you up,
you're kind of reifying your best self.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like a form of glamour magic. I mean, if you want to talk about like Dion Fortune, she gets into it very explicitly in Sea Priestess and Moon Magic, the construction of the magical personality, right?
Yeah. Which a lot of people see as a con, and I mean, from an outside perspective,
those are the same people, like when a young woman puts on like a decent bra and a little bit of makeup, they think she's lying. She's just lying.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right.
That's not what she really looks like. Okay, bro.
Well, see, this is of course where our minds go, which is like, just don't hate us because you hate us, right?
Right.
So yeah, but there is something to be said for, it's like with certain, depression, one of the things you can do, I mean, and I'm not at all saying this is everything, we'll do it for everyone, or trying to take it on a lighthearted thing. Well, if you just don't act depressed, right? I mean, if you're having problems, you need to go get checked out physically, maybe get psychological or psychiatric help, because it depends on, it could be any number of things, and diagnosis is important, but it can be helpful if you are able to do small things to act, just get up and do your hygiene, put on some clothes, go out, take a little walk if you can, and this can help you send yourself the signal that you're not as depressed. And then also talking with people can be helpful too, if you have like a positive interaction, right? Because we are social creatures, and then it's kind of giving you the feedback. Recently, I've been dealing with a lot of neuropsychiatric issues myself, which it turns out after a lot of testing looks to be central nervous system lupus. So my brain is its own worst enemy. So it's basically your own immune system decides, let's eat the forbidden fruit, right? Your brain. So I had to get a lot of diagnosis and testing to figure out, okay, this is what's going on and this is how to treat it. But it's been helpful for me dealing with a lot of doctors and getting like, psychological testing about my abilities and stuff. People are like, well, you actually come across a lot better than you think that you do, and you still have a lot of capabilities that, I've experienced a big drop, and internally it's still very frustrating.
Yeah.
I'm able to speak with you because we chat all the time in the background. We've talked about a number of different things, and this is stuff that you and I have discussed many times.
Yeah, for anybody watching this, Steph and I talk daily, and we're probably talking about you behind your back.
And we're
known for saying nice things about people behind their back, though. So
yeah. That is a practice developed by Matt over here. Just like the saying nice things about people behind their backs.
I think it was a collaborative thing. I think we can share credit for that.
But yeah, so that was helpful for me to get, because I'm just so much inside my mind, and it's just going haywire so much, that to get the feedback from people outside of me is really helpful because for a long time I didn't want to be public barely at all, because I would just feel so not awkward or ashamed, but just self-conscious about how I was coming across. But having that interaction with other people helped me to see how I come across to them, and then I can take that on board and then be able to realize, because that's part of the thing with me, is that I just have to study a lot and repeat something a lot in order to kind of take it on board and then be able to express it. So that's kind of the process. It's a similar process to creation of the magical personality, right? Where you have this internal idea, and then you're trying to present it to other people, and then they feed back to you, and then you're able to kind of leverage yourself up into that.
And I think social media makes it very easy for people to do exactly that. But it also makes it easy for snakes to slip in and be well hidden, so it's kind of understandable. But I think there is kind of, among some people, I've seen some posts, and there is an attitude that exists, I think, where people try to act like the parasocial presentation of a person via the internet and social media in particular is like something distinct from who they really are, and that it's always a grift, or like it's always a lie and all that stuff. But it's not necessarily. I mean, like, I think it can be like your social media presence, more than being a brand or a venue for content peddling, can be a magical persona, and it can be utilized that way. And why not? But you have to be honest about it, I mean, I say some pretty grandiose and weird things on there, but I'm never lying. That's very much me. That's me coming through.
And the thing is that there's always, like you're never entitled. And it's like this weird thing that people have with spiritual teachers or writers, the idea that you're entitled to all of them.
Yeah.
And you're not, right? I mean,
right.
Everyone has a private life. You have your relationship with your family. You have relationships with like your hobby friends, with your old school friends, with your neighbors,
even
your
like
kids.
A work life, your career.
Yes. That's a perfect example. You have all these separate relationships, and it's, I don't know why I always think of, like when I went to my great uncle, Bob's funeral, he lived in North Fork, California for a number of years, and he had a gas station there, and he was a big member of the community. And I hadn't really known the extent to which he was captain of the volunteer fire department for a number of years. And so many people came forward and spoke about how he helped them, young people. One woman spoke about how her, this is so sad, her son had been died in a fire in the community. And so for a year after that, my Uncle Bob said, okay, we're going to do a phone tree. We're not going to ring the fire bell. So you have a year to not have to listen to that and get, traumatized by it. Young people saying how he helped them socially and with job stuff. And so there was this whole aspect of him that we didn't know about, including that he had, it was the sweetest thing. There was a woman there that he was very close to, and she had like a lunch for us, all of his family, like it was about 20 of us, and in her home, and it was just this beautiful meal. And I'd never even heard of her before. And I always think of her. But yeah, so it's just, people that you're pretty close to, but, people always have these parts of themselves that you aren't going to know about. And if you're looking to someone for spiritual, not even just advice, but but just general knowledge or something online, I think that what you said is very smart to bear in mind, that you're just seeing like a part of who this person is, and the thing to wonder about is, okay, how would this affect you? What do you think of this idea? Is it something that seems worth pursuing, or that you could be using it in your own pursuits, as opposed to trying to play gotcha on a person? I think too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a competition, really. It doesn't have to be. You can make it one, I guess, but it doesn't have to be. Because there's been so many times that I've listened to people speak about magic in their own practice, and like there's a bifurcation point in their line of reasoning where I don't disagree that what they say is possible. I just don't agree with how they go about doing it. So there's a spot along that path that they follow where I sharply diverge. But up to that point, I can learn from it. And then whatever is past that point, it's still instructive, because I can do the opposite of it, or I can think about how better to direct that, I think about this recently. I don't drop. This is another thing. I always feel foolish dropping my own plugs and everything for stuff that I'm doing, which is asinine. I should be trying to get stuff out there, but when I was working on my recent blog post of the Cone 143, and like a magical working, I put a lot of thought into that, and talking to you, bouncing ideas off of you, talking to Professor Wham,
Yes.
having discussions with people in the Vase podcast Discord, and here again we have the value of parasocial relationships working to the benefit of a magical working, But I had it in my mind that I had to word it carefully in the blog post, because I was thinking of Michael M. Hughes' book of Magic for the Resistance, which in effect was a binding ritual against Trump, right? Yeah. And what I'm talking about is not binding. It's not hexing. It's not cursing. It's an alternative to that. But I'm not trying to be disparaging towards Michael Hughes, because I think what he came up with was pretty great. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with the methodology.
But you're just doing something different.
My way of coming at it is more, I guess, holistic, trying to get to a fundamental spot to ripple out and affect things largely, regardless of specific political actions, specific ideologies, but yeah, not everything has to work for everybody, I guess, is really it, because it's a deeply personal thing. You have your own things that you have to weigh, and if you're working with discarnate entities, that's also deeply personal. There's nothing more deeply personal than that. That's the way the phenomena behaves. I've often said it's like following a trail of breadcrumbs that leads you back to yourself, and that's how it is, because somebody else could try to copy you directly and end up declaring that you're a fraud, so, because it's not going to work for them, right? Or it may or may not.
Well, that's a lot of the thing too, is finding out what will work for you and what your own strengths and weaknesses are. I mean, it's like, well, we just had the Olympics. I mean, some people are highly athletic, some people are not. And then everyone has these like very specific capacities or talents that you can then develop, right? A shot putter is not going to be, generally speaking, someone who, let's say, I don't want to say, someone who is going to be a world-class shot putter is not going to be the same person who's going to be a world-class like rhythmic gymnast,
Yeah.
or long distance swimmer. And some of these things are very strange because you would never discover them except for happenstance or trying something out. I had a good friend in college. Her mom became like a top ranked women's long distance runner, but she never even jogged until she was 50.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly she's like,
Wow.
up there nationwide, just
yeah.
So we all have these capacities, but then like something like with Michael Hughes. First of all, hi Michael, if you're watching, because I've known him from back on the rigorous intuition board when he was Professor Pan and I was Luna Rose, and
Right.
I really appreciate. He's just been against this alt-right stuff, like just standing out there taking the heat for a long time, and I really appreciate him for that.
No, he's great.
Yeah, but it's kind of like if someone gets, let's say, shot or something, right? You need to have that first aid right there, right away. But then you need to have like the healing and the physical therapy and everything too. It doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. It helps to have these different approaches. I think that they help strengthen things. So, I see his binding ritual as more like kind of like a first aid type of thing, or immediate. And then what you're working on is kind of helping build the base for longer term positive direction. So I think that, having more of these things together, you can build something more solid and more profound. So
yeah, and I mean that was the hope, is it's a collaborative thing. Like I'm always open to people coming to me, and I'm always looking for cool new things, and I get anxious about it. Another one of my many hang-ups that maybe people don't know about is I get anxious speaking about these things because I don't even really. I wonder if people even consider me to be like an occultist or a magician, or whether I just wax magical sometimes. I don't know. I don't know how people see me. So I'm weary of talking about these things and making it sound like I'm talking down to anyone about it, or trying to be a guru or trying to be like some figure of authority. It's just I've practiced my own kind of idiosyncratic practice for a long time. I've had a lot of things that work really well for me, and I've read a hell of a lot of books and tried other people's practices, and I have insights maybe that are helpful to people, and that's what I hope, is that it will be helpful. So it's difficult to like speak on these things sometimes, right? I mean, I'm not alone in that, right?
No, I think it's hard.
I think a lot of people are more than happy to have like a title of authority on magic applied to them.
Well, it's funny because I just had this thing recently. I was talking to you about it, but someone who has a much more well-known reputation for being knowledgeable about the occult and various spiritual practices was speaking, and he was talking about a time when he went to Nepal or India, anyway, and he had lived with a Tibetan Buddhist Rinpoche for a month. And he was talking about this and his experience, which, I don't want to denigrate. I was not there. I mean, that's a pretty cool experience, all that type of stuff. I didn't agree with everything that he was saying just based on my own experience. But then I thought, wait, I was like living in the same house with Rinpoche for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Right.
like full time, and there weren't a lot of people there. And so I thought, well, why do I feel like, I just don't have anything to say? This guy's
Right.
sitting
Yeah.
here charging for it.
One does have to wonder. Yeah.
Which,
Becomes, and I'm weary of like the occult pissing pissing contest too. It's like I don't really need that either. I mean, this is all stuff I just don't even want to wade into. I
yeah.
guess maybe that's what it is I just don't even feel like having the drama. But I
But
do love it. I love the practice of it, though. I love magic, and like when you accomplish something, um, it's exciting, which sometimes means diminishing returns. I feel like when you accomplish something and you get excited about it, the next time you try it fails. But the nature of the beast. But
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I love all this stuff, and it's fun to talk about, but um, I don't really know why there has to be so much animosity around it. I suppose that's a built-in feature as well.
Yeah. I think some people are trying to get their message out there, and they believe in it a lot. Or they're trying to, make money or that type of thing off it. But I think one of the beauties of the internet is that, for example, we've never met in person and we're on opposite sides of the continent, but we're able to communicate about these issues and speak about it. And a lot of people are in areas where, it can be, I don't want to say, a not super common interest, but you're able to make these connections and then talk to other people. And then there's more podcasts, and there have been forums in the past and stuff where people who aren't necessarily, bless you, Mom. Mom's eating a mini cupcake from our friend Judy for her birthday, which is coming up in a few days.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, but you're able to hear more about people that have developed their individual practices, or just have like their own strange experiences, or aren't necessarily knit into like say the OTO or their top level Freemason, or aren't kind of knit into an organization, or people who I like books. I am excited that people will publish books and everything, but I think sometimes there tends to be a little bit of a too much leaning on people who have written a book, and then you come and you interview the person about the book. And I think there's a lot of people that have interesting things to say, and a lot of experience and practice that don't necessarily, or haven't necessarily done the book thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of wish that there was a little bit more of a venue for that type of thing. I think there've been some.
Well, they are. I think there are, but they're scattered.
Yeah.
They're small communities. They're kind of spread out, thin networks that sometimes overlap. But I do think that's. I think that's by design. I think that the real magic that exists in the world is part of this web of interconnectivity between people. And when certain strands of the web get plucked, it causes the vibration to travel down the line. And it's happening in ways that are tangible and observable and traceable, but also in ways that are less so. I think that at any given time in Earth's history, there's probably a finite amount of people that are tuned in with it, and they don't necessarily know each other, may not ever run into one another, but they all affect one another. I think that's a constant thing that's always been going on. So
I like that idea, and I like that. There's a lot of people that are just, they're not like out there as like being super spiritual or explicitly that way, but they really embody that dedication to, spiritual upliftment in their life through, various means. And I think that, like you said, there's a lot of those people around, even just in various communities. And that I would only just encourage people to, because like I've met people who are like more, Lama Kunga, right? He's like a certified Rinpoche.
Yeah.
I shouldn't tease him, but he's a very funny person and makes a lot of jokes. And he was like a very not super pompous or anything like that. There was a lot of joking around. But at the same time, I had people like my friend Duncan Lee, who I knew when I was in my 20s, and he was actually a Mason, a lifelong Mason. I met him at an Episcopal church where I was doing some Sunday school teaching, and he just a lovely person, and he cared for his wife Neva. When I met them, she was already pretty bad with Alzheimer's, but he cared for her until just like about a month or so before she died at his home. And I don't know, he was just very loving, very centered, very humble. And I don't know, I think about it now, it seems kind of funny. So I was like about 22, 23, and he was like 90 plus, and he had a Mustang because he'd always been interested in cars. So when Neva passed, as a consolation prize for himself, he got like a Mustang. So it was so funny because we would be like driving around town, and like I'd get out of the car, and like people would be looking because I was young and cute getting out of this sports car, and then Duncan would get out. He's like 90 years old and 6 feet tall. People are like, what? I remember this one, we were in Oakland one time, and these young black guys are like, what in the hell is going on? But he was just really sweet, and we'd go and go like the Armenian festival or the Greek Orthodox festival, or museums and stuff. And he was just always I don't know, he just taught me a lot about how to be a decent person no matter what your circumstances are, and to just do it through daily life. And he's no big shakes, but he made it, he was like one of my strongest teachers. The same with Lloyd Matsuoka, who was the father of my boyfriend when I was younger. And he was very knowledgeable about Taoism, astrology, precognition, the I Ching. I learned Tarot. I learned an incredible amount from him. But at the same time, he was just, someone in my life. So I always like to encourage people to kind of see if you can keep your feelers out for those people like you're talking about, right? Keep the feelers out for, are they somewhere around, and pay attention to people that don't have that glamour or so-called spiritual authority. The humble people, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the phenomena works through people too.
That's exactly it.
You can meet somebody once and never meet them again, never learn their name, not know who they were. It's just somebody you bump into at a gas station, and they say something to you that's a little out of the ordinary, and it sticks in your mind. And that can lead you to some kind of earth-shattering revelation.
Exactly.
And it can happen, and they'll never know. They may never know. They may have intended for it, though. They could have, maybe. Who knows? We don't know how all this stuff actually works. But once you start thinking about it, it kind of expands your horizons to a multitude of possibilities. When you really start thinking about all of the things that need to be in place for a certain synchronicity to happen the way it happens. At the moment it happens, for you to have the kind of revelation that you might have had, so it's always worth listening to people. And that's why there was always this old parable from, I believe it's from the Bible. I'm a bad Bible guy, but it's a story of like an angel coming to visit one of the characters, and he's dressed as a indigent person, somebody without a or anything. Like a beggar. He shows up as a beggar.
Mm.
And it's like a test, you know. And so I mean, when somebody comes up to you, like, you can't really if you think you're better than somebody that's coming up to speak to you or that you run into in your daily life, that's part of the problem. You're probably not. You know, we're all kind of on a level playing field out here.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I mean, we're all going to end up,
Yeah.
we're all going to end up in the same place. We're all going through
But
it together. Yeah.
and that gets back to what I wanted to say about teachers is that all these people can teach you something. I know. Even the worst people can teach you something, even if it's just don't be that person.
Just like, do not go there.
Right. Because there's no perfect people here, because if they were perfect, they wouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
they would have traveled on to another plane or another
blown this
brain.
popsicle stand.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, if you want to get really metaphysical about it, every single person that you meet or hear about or recognize or talk to is you as well. You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's something that I've heard Jeremy Bainey say in probably 500,000 different ways. It's a drum he's been beating for like 2 decades, but he's right. You know, he listened to old Paratopias from ages ago, and he's still saying that same thing. You know,
I know, it cracks me up, but I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, other people irritate me, but then, you know, the person that irritates me the most is myself.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think if you're self-aware enough to recognize that, then that's a step of some kind.
Yeah. It could give you
You're your own worst enemy, you know.
I don't know. This is one of the things that I appreciated about, well, as I was taught Vajrayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, is that there are these different practices. And the idea is that you can do certain working with certain deities, like let's say Manjushri or Vajrayogini. And the one that always sticks in my mind is Vajra practice, because I tend to get inflamed or angry. But the idea is that if you have a tendency to have a temper or get angry, that you can transform this into the as a way to, like, you can see things.
Yeah.
And you can see injustice. And if you see injustice, then you are able to address it. And then if you're angry about it, then you have the energy to address it.
Well, I mean, that's what Vajra means, right? It's the thunderbolt and the diamond.
Yeah.
It's the focused energy, the unstoppable force meeting an immovable object.
But yeah, it's like a particular type of energy. And then, you know, there's various other aspects of the various other things, but it all depends upon, you know, who you are, what are your own tendencies, and then working with that, as opposed to thinking that there's a one size fits all, or that being a compassionate person looks in one particular way. I mean, it's like the whole trope of the I don't want to say, like the cold surgeon, but they're really good at their job, and so they end up, even though they don't make you feel good, they emotionally, or don't come across as like a warm person, that they are able to you know, save the child's life or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Which is corny, but it's also very true. You know, you can't expect everything from everyone, and it's important to, you know, we're part of a community, so to try and develop, you know, what your own capacities are. And I think that for a lot of people, it's like you have an idea of what it's going to be. You know, what's a wizard look like? What's a witch look like? Or a Thelemic lady? Oh no, I won't look good naked on the altar, so I can't be a Thelemite or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that there's, you know, infinite possibilities out there for how you could be a magical person in the world. So that's part of the deal.
Varying degrees of it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be a cranky guy with a lot of ducks over in Hawaii, like our friend Jerry.
Yeah. I hope he's watching this.
That would be fun. I enjoy his things. It's interesting because I don't understand a lot of kind of the theory of where he is coming from his practice and everything, but I still find it very interesting.
Well, I feel like most of it's direct experience, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more on the Kundalini end of things, I guess. So.
Yeah, I just every time I listen to him, I feel like, wow, I really just don't understand so much of this, but it's interesting. I enjoy hearing him speak about what it's been like for him to go through all this stuff. I always enjoy hearing what people have, talk about, like weird shit that's happened to them, basically.
Well, that's what it's all about, right?
And then sometimes, I'll be talking to people or something, and they'll talk about something that's bothering them, and then I'll be like, hey, I heard about this, and then it could be helpful for them because it's some stray weird thing. So
yeah,
that's how I justify it in my mind. Anyway.
That's why you're always blowing up my DMs with inappropriate stuff.
Yeah, typing away. You know what grinds my gears? It's like by now a lot grinds my gears.
Yeah, for a little inside scoop, if people are watching, being close friends with Stephanie is receiving a lot of voice notes that are like, "Hey, I hope you're having a great day. I just wanted to." Oh, hold on. Okay, I just wanted to tell you, I was thinking. Oh my God! And then it clicks off.
I don't know why I can never well, I think part of it is like the neurological stuff, but then I've always kind of had that tendency to begin with. So I always have to kind of like try and ease into it. Once I get going, it's a little bit different story, but I'm like, or my favorite is like, I'm always like, hi, it's Steph. It's like, yeah, this is the DM saying it's coming from your account. So it's like,
right. Obviously it's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Oliver doing a clever impersonation of you.
His ventriloquial skills.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Well, this is very nice. I'm thinking that I should get my brother's coming over, so I should probably get doing some stuff. This is really fun for me, and thank you for doing what you always do, which is listening to me rant.
Well, I mean, what are colleagues in Kookonomy for?
It's true. It's true. We are both certified doctors of Kookonomy, so you can trust everything we have to say, given our deep academic certification.
And if you sign up for a newsletter, we'll send you a singular grain of salt in the mail that you may take at will.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm trying to think. I don't know. Oh, so you are going to be on the Anonymicon, Ryan Spriggs.
Yeah, sort of. Alan Greenfield is going to be at Anomicon, and he asked me for help to make his presentation happen. So his presentation is kind of a dialogue between he and I, with me asking direct questions and him doing what Alan Greenfield does.
Yes, classic Alan Greenfield. Yeah, that was a great online conference, I thought, last year. It had a lot of diverse people and interesting topics, and the chat was really fun.
Yeah, I didn't think he was bringing it back this year because I imagine it was an astronomical task, and he had a lot of difficulties with it. I know, like his YouTube got demonetized, like all kinds of crazy stuff happened with Ryan. So props to him for coming back with it again. That's pretty cool.
And it's free. Yeah,
it's
so I really respect him. I saw a lot of new people, and he had a great kind of gender diversity and stuff. So
yeah, and obviously you don't have to be there when it's happening, but it's fun too, because then there's a live chat bar going on, so you can kind of see who else is watching and kind of chat in real time with people.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have Labor Day weekend plans and you're going away or something, it'll be there when you come back. So you don't have to worry.
Mhm. Well, then you want to like do any type of a sign off, or I thought I'd ask that to make it seem really natural, like we have this plan.
Well, we didn't do any kind of sign on. we signed on with identifying where Oliver is. So where is he now? Is he still on the chair?
Yeah, he's still on the chair. He's being real good and sleeping.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea where Bernie is. He's probably moping in my bedroom. But
he's like levitating, practicing his astral projection or something.
Probably.
Opening his third eye.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been Saturday evening rambling with Stephanie Quick and AP Strange. I hope you people have enjoyed it. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
All right. Let's stop the recording then.